Hello everyone, welcome. I'm delighted today to be joined by Travis Johnson. Travis is the CEO for the Americas of Chain IQ. Travis, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Travis and I have had the privilege of collaborating on a few projects in the past prior to him joining Chain IQ. I thought it'd be a good idea to invite him on to talk about what he's doing in his new role. Travis, perhaps you can tell our audience a little bit about yourself as a brief introduction as a starting point, please.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, first of all, great to be back collaborating with you. I always appreciate the opportunity that we have to be able to talk about procurement leaders. I genuinely appreciate the things you're doing to try and advance procurement and supply chain and helping leaders to identify resources to support that advancement. A little bit about myself. Last 29 years, I've been in procurement, supply chain, and operations functions. Various industries, including personal care, semiconductor, life sciences, solar, renewables, CPG, and retail is my most recent stint. And now here at Chain IQ, where we provide managed services for indirect procurement. Talk more about that a little bit later. But had more of a global journey, the opportunity to engage with employees, suppliers, and clients in EMEA, APAC, and the Americas.
Indeed, and you joined the business last year. You joined Chain IQ last year. Why don't you just you touched on what you do there? Why don't you just give a little bit more flavour as to what the business offers in terms of services and solutions to its customers?
For sure, thank you. Chain IQ, we're a global AI-driven procurement services partner, specifically focusing on indirect procurement. We solely focus on that indirect procurement, although we have the abilities to be able to look at assessments on the direct material side as well. We manage $26 billion in indirect spend. We have about 750 procurement experts across 15 different countries, speaking over 9 different languages. However, I like to tell our clients that we're really passionate about delivering value and about relationships. We're passionate about the relationships with our clients, our employees, and our suppliers. It's because we act as an extension of our client that we really just find that we're better together.
That's a great overview. I'm sure we're going to dig into some of those points you've made in this conversation. And so, of course, you're so heavily immersed in the procurement world, Travis, talking to C-suite execs every day almost, particularly from procurement and finance backgrounds. What would you say is most on your mind when it comes to the conversations you're having with things that are on their mind?
Yeah, I love the question. In fact, I love asking individuals when we start in our conversations with C-suite individuals, just, what are your biggest pain points? What are you trying to solve? Great question, too, from a timeliness standpoint, because I just read the 2025 Hackett report on what is on CPOs' minds. And I would say, too, really what's on my mind is the same as what is in that Hackett report. The first I would say would be value realization. And this would be more than just cost savings. And in fact, really, this could be the overarching capstone of the other 2 points. So it's not only in obtaining savings or cost reduction, but it's making sure that there's a governance model in place so that stakeholders to procurement, finance, and procurement itself are ensuring that the negotiated savings is actually realized on the P&L. And that needs to occur because of a synergy where you actually remove the budget by being able to strip that out. So the first would be value realization. Second, I would say would be digital transformation. This now more than the question of, this is more than just best in class versus best of breed, but now it's really looking at AI use cases and trying to pass through the hype that does exist within AI. And then how can we really leverage use cases that are fit for purpose, that are agile, that are these more frequent sprints to be able to transform and deliver value to the organization quicker. So I would say that digital also carries the element of the need for data management, governance, analytics. So there's several that would nest under that topic of digital transformation. And then the last, which is probably close to your heart as well, would be talent and workforce. And I see C-suite executives that are wondering, really, do I have the right personnel? And how are my people going to adapt in a very changing world? Mobilizing those resources with the right capabilities to fulfill strategic priorities in that changing environment. That's a real challenge to know how to leverage, I'll say your assets, but I hope that doesn't sound diminishing. It's just people bring to the table many capabilities and diversity. And so it's mobilization of those talents and then advancing them so we're ever changing to be ahead of the changing world. So I think that's probably enough that's on everyone's mind as well.
It certainly isn't. And these are subjects that you and I have discussed in all of our conversations all the time we've known each other, Travis. And of course, they're all intertwined together. And it's interesting that Hackett has really highlighted these three in particular in this most recent research, because we've both seen reports where these have been highlighted for a while now. Do you really think this year is a year that, with all the hype around AI, we'll see some more meaningful progress? I'm really hopeful we will do on the skills issue in particular.
I do. It seems like, as you think about the hype cycle and Gartner's efforts on that, which I appreciate, and I think there's some reality to that curve, we are at a point that it can't be just a discussion anymore. Otherwise, we'll start to see a fallout of procurement technology. And there's probably going to be some of that anyway. But now we're starting to see really, it seems like to me, we're seeing partnerships that are starting to form and evolve rather than a company having to do it all. That best of breed beyond is, and someone told me, I'm trying to think what they had said, almost like a best of all a la carte that people can pick and choose.
Yeah. I think it's been a fascinating year on that front. I'm really excited about what's going to be achieved this year and beyond. Getting back to the Hackett report, it also refers to the progression of outsourcing in the procurement space. And of course, that's now an area you're particularly familiar with now since you've joined Chain IQ. What trends or insights can you share on that specific topic, Travis?
Yeah, thanks. And I do love the topic for a few reasons. So let me share three things. The first would be the opportunity. You mentioned the word outsourcing. I'll stick with that for a minute, but then perhaps take a slightly different perspective on it. So there's a recent market research study that was done by SNS Insider that stated that procurement outsourcing is expected to grow to 11.13 billion by 2032 and grow at a compound annual growth rate of 14%. And within North America, that's dominating that growth. So they see this aggressive increase because of IT requirements, more rapid changes and requirements in category management, and the need to handle this ever-changing compliance that existing from government as well as country requirements as well, especially with such a focus on data protection and privacy. So outsourcing is a way to be able to provide that. So that's the first, is just a natural tendency that there is that growth expectation. The second, I do believe that we need to think of the term outsourcing slightly different today in 2025. So outsourcing, if we look historically, that became very popular in the late 1980s. And in the 90s, we started to see companies outsource things. We started to see call centers that were outsourced, manufacturing, software development. But when they were outsourced, they were typically moved out of the plant or out of the corporate location and offshore. So it was very apparent that it was truly being outsourced because it was out of sight and out of mind in a different location. What I think we need to consider today is really what Chain IQ focuses on as well, is perhaps more of an insourcing or supplementing. So instead of being out of sight and out of mind, we want to be fully in sight. We want to be there with the team, with our clients, around the stakeholders, seen as an extension of the client. And we don't even see ourselves then as a separate company because we become integrated into the culture and the people, and we're there on site. So I believe the trend Hackett is referencing too in some of their reports is that companies will need their procurement organizations to focus on things that are critical, maybe more confidential. And then that allows other services partners like Chain IQ to be able to focus on perhaps the non-critical, less confidential. And it's not to say that it's not strategic. It's just there is a prioritization of where you leverage your own resources because you are the experts in your industry, where we're domain experts as well. So the difference, I think, we're being insourced to operate within a framework of the client rather than just outsourcing to a different framework. And I'm, again, not talking about tactical and just downstream. It's really that integration into all of a source to pay process, but optimizing it so that it's fit for purpose and can be scalable and agile. So that was a long point number two. The third one would be really simple. We need to understand that this new paradigm of insourcing is not a competition with the existing procurement organization. It isn't whether or not the third party, like a Chain IQ, is better than the existing procurement organization, but it's rather how are we better together. And that's really how I had started out introducing Chain IQ is, hey, we believe together we're better. So as a managed services provider like Chain IQ is, supplementing versus supplanting a procurement team is really able to provide deep category expertise, subject matter expertises in order to complement where a procurement organization within a company is already strong.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to make that, to explain that in the way you had on Travis, because you make the point about outsourcing historically, to paraphrase you, sort of out of sight, out of mind. It was very much seen as a sort of, a cost-driven, cost-saving sort of activity around, transactional, tactical activities, and as a result, people perceived it in that way, had a certain sort of perception or brand. What you're talking about is a much more strategic value add, much more expert advisory, and comes back to that very important word, value. And you mentioned value generation is top of mind for procurement leaders. And build on those comments you've made about insourcing. How do companies really realise that value from insourcing without bearing the cost of the double overhead? I think people perceive it will be a double overhead of user and managed service provider. How do they get that value in that particular equation?
Yeah, I love the question because it always comes up, and just value generation in general. It reminds me of a time when I was in operations and overseeing manufacturing for a solar renewables company. And we were considering optimizing our manufacturing locations and leveraging a contract manufacturer for a build out of part of our manufacturing process and doing it offshore as well. And I remember the president asking and saying, how are you going to avoid paying double overhead costs? Since the contract manufacturer will manufacture one part and layer on their overhead, and we retain overhead costs as well. So it is a real balance to be able to look at that overall total cost, which we really try to do as a part of Chain IQ. But again, going back to your point of it is truly about value realization and being able to show how that impacts the P&L. So that's the first thing, is that we look at making sure that the ROI is evident on the P&L. Then there's a few other things that can be looked at too. I think the first way is with long tail. Typically, most strategic sourcing organizations focus on spend values and categories that are above a certain threshold. For a company that's over, I would say, $5 billion, $6 billion in revenue, they may say, okay, at $250,000 of spend, we draw the line. We're going to focus on everything above 250,000, or maybe it's 150, 100. Every company and culture and location's a little bit different. But there's always that long tail that does get unmanaged, or it's managed within the stakeholders of the business that owns that budget. So there are solutions, not only tools, but there's methodologies and processes to be able to capture savings on that tail. So that would be the first way for value realization that is not typically being managed today. And then the second way is really defining what the roles and responsibilities are of the existing versus that in-source team. As these teams work together, we're able to move what I would say up the value continuum. So if I can try to create a visual on this, imagining that there is an X and Y axis. So if the X axis would be the company's industry expertise. And so as they have a procurement organization, they know that company very well. And let's take ocean freight as an example.
Yeah.
If you're an ocean freight carrier, your world and industry is very unique. Well, the procurement team that operates within that ocean freight organization, they understand maritime and ocean logistics extremely well. If I think about the y-axis being your suppliers in indirect, well, they're experts in their product. If you have a IT hardware that is trying to sell into the ocean freight company, they don't know that industry extremely well. So trying to get them to balance each other's expertise, that's where that value continuum lies. The value continuum is going to go up in just a top right direction on an angle. And so trying to ensure that individuals that come together with this relationship, a buyer and a supplier, as they try to bring their expertise together, that's where the optimal value is, that you can generate real value together. And that's where I see additional value that a managed services company can provide. If they work with a client that knows their industry, like ocean freight, extremely well, but we understand each of the domain of categories extremely well, because that's all we do is focus on, let's say, IT hardware. We have a team that just is dedicated towards that. Then it's able to move up that value continuum where you don't have to worry about so much of the duplicate overheads, because your generation of return on investment is significantly higher by capitalizing on what is great between both organizations. Hence, we're better together.
And back to your point on talent, you've got a depth of expertise in category markets, supplier markets, that other organisations are having difficulty replicating, because we all know about the shortage of specific types of talent, in procurement and other professions, of course, as well, particularly procurement in those specific areas. So you've got those years and years of knowledge in those areas that you can bring to the benefit of your customers to deliver that value. And I think that's only going to be enhanced in an area where you and I have got this shared passion, something that's really brought us together, if truth be told, about the role that technology has to play in procurement, something that we're both very passionate about. Where do you see technology really impacting what you do in Chain IQ moving forward? What's your vision for that, for the business? And also, what's your vision for what that can deliver for your customers in the future as well?
Well, I love the question. As you've mentioned, we both share this passion on procurement technology and to help procurement leaders. So thanks for the question on that. I'll go back to how I introduced Chain IQ as a global AI-driven procurement services partner. So technology becomes paramount for our business, and we are AI-driven. And every company tends to say that as well, that they're AI-driven. But for us, it's a very intentional and real use of that term, because we are looking for ways to be able to deliver value in a few different areas. So let me answer perhaps each of the questions a little bit differently. And so I've got two things on my mind, and then maybe some imagery I can share. The first one is, so how do we use it today? First, we focus on creating an ecosystem of best-of-breed solutions. We're a technology solution agnostic. So you don't have to use what we build, but what we're really trying to do is bring these best point solutions that are going to deliver value as quickly as possible based on the use case that client needs or wants at that time, because we want the solution to be scalable and fit for purpose. So our ability to co-innovate allows Chain IQ to generate market-leading efficiencies using our Smart Connect platform, which brings in this ecosystem of best-of-breed solutions, so that the data elements that are needed for visualization and analysis are available for us and for our clients whenever they need it. So I said we're technology agnostic, which we are, but we know that there's a platform that needs to be able to bring in these best-of-breed point solutions so that the data elements make sense on how to visualize and be used based on prompts that are coming in from a client or the users within that client. Now, And within that first thing, so what I'm starting to see then is really a shift between spend analytics into data analytics. And we've adapted to this shift by ensuring that we're providing data transparency through this Smart Connect portal so that our clients have real-time data for their systems and this best of breed ecosystem. So that would be the first thing as to how to really leverage all of the different technologies out there. Is instead of having to try to comb through all of these best of breed solutions, we bring to light those that are going to address the most important use cases, but also through this capability of what we call a Smart Connect platform. The second is our vision for the future, which you had said, what is that state? And this is interesting too, because I recently did a poll on LinkedIn where I had asked the question, what people believe delivers the greatest value in procurement technology? Is it first, best in class? Second, best of breed? Third, best of breed plus orchestration? Or last, best of breed plus orchestration plus generative AI? 50% chose the last option, which is that combination, best of breed, orchestration, generative AI. About 25% chose best of breed, and then the other 25% chose best of breed and orchestration, which is interesting, Telly, that we could talk about that at another time as well. What does that mean for the best in class? But our vision is simple. It's to be the tour guide for procurement leaders to realize the fastest ROI on their technology investment. And not only do we have the partnerships within this ecosystem to do that, but we have the talent and people that understand procurement and how to be able to deploy, transform, and deliver that value. And the imagery I talked about is I do think about AI significantly in my life. And in my mind's eye, I'm imagining procurement leaders, CPOs, CFOs standing at this cliff. And at the bottom of the cliff is this river, and let's call it an AI river. And everyone's just staring down at this river that is called AI, and they know they need to get in the water, but they're really not sure, should I jump in? Should I walk down to the bottom? Do I ask for a parachute, for a zip line? Once I'm in the water, do I need a life jacket? Do I need a raft? Should I swim? So there's all these questions around being involved and being in it. Every company's journey is going to be a little different, but what tends to be the same across the companies are the various use cases in procurement, but which use cases should be attended to first is specific for each company. And so that's where we see an opportunity to be able to help, is to be that tour guide while standing at this cliff, because not everybody's going to take the same journey back down to the river. So yes, we have our eye on agentic AI, small language models, conversational AI, RAG models, data indexing, and all of the like. People are aware of these things, but we're also realists. And we know that there isn't just a big bang that has to occur, because that's expensive. And so for us, we want to be able to provide those point solutions based on use cases that are going to deliver value quickly, but still allow individuals to be in that AI river, but it's fit for their purpose.
It's a great image, really, and really sort of, as you were explaining it, I was really thinking about all the conversations I see, particularly on LinkedIn, or conversations I had with other people who've got a stake in this whole world about, how do you get started, where do you get started, excitement, fear, all these different emotions that people are feeling about it. I thought when you joined Chain IQ and through our subsequent conversations that with so many procurement leaders really struggling to get started on tech, not just AI, but on tech generally, struggling to make that business case, really construct a robust sort of a case for return on investment, that they're not able to get started and build momentum. I envision you can probably win and retain customers because you've got a tech offering that they've just not got access to. Do you see that as being a source of competitive advantage, that you'll give people access to tools they're not going to get, and therefore you'll win your customers on that, as well as the other source of value you've already told us about, Travis?
Yeah, for sure. No question. And where individuals may want to bounce ideas off of their use cases and needs, and then cutting through the different technologies and how to get that ROI quicker as we provide that partnership, that ecosystem of best of breed. Absolutely. And because we're technology agnostic and there's not one solution that we have to sell or use or implement as a part of the solution. We really try to tailor that to the need of the client. Now, but there's also a few things that I do think that we try to help generate as a part of our explanation on value delivery from procurement technology. And maybe I'll just share a couple of those points as well, because I do believe that there are 4 different value categories that should be taken into consideration for every business case. Now, we do this as a part of digital transformation as we work with clients, but I think it's applicable for every company to consider as they're working with their CFO to generate that value proposition. So the first would be, does the technology deliver cost savings? And all CFOs want to see that. Is there a direct correlation with being able to achieve cost savings? And there are some capabilities that do strictly just that. The second, I would say, is productivity, which can start to be a real P&L savings if it's done well. And I don't mean that you just have someone that can work more efficiently, but there are ways to allow productivity to benefit the P&L. And technology is very applicable for that. The third, I would say, is governance. And this might be an interesting one for people to say, how do you sell governance as a value statement to the CFO? But it can be seen in 2 different ways. First, governance could be enforcing to ensure that a step is not missed so that a company is compliant with all of the things they need to do. But it also could be that that step is not missed so that you maximize the value of what may often be missed. In that sense, it might be more, hey, there are strategic considerations in a step that governance ensures that a person is maximizing value as a procurement professional follows a process flow. So governance should be considered as you're looking at capabilities. And then the last one, which I thought about really probably about a year and a half ago, is, can a tool help a person be more strategic in their thinking? And that one I think is, and I've asked about this when presenting in conferences, if individuals, a procurement leader, would place value on a tool that made their people think more strategically. But if you think about the amount of data that procurement professionals have to analyze today, it's really almost impossible for the brain to be able to synthesize that data in order to perform correlation analysis or trend analysis, or to find those actionable insights that they can do something with. And technology, we know, can supplement perhaps some lacking capabilities. And not to say that someone is poor or bad, it's just by nature of where individuals have the bandwidth and ability to be able to do things with that data. And so the more I see procurement technology take and move away from just data description, but start moving into data prescription, and in some cases data prediction, but that prescription around here's what you should go do, that's a real value generation. And so actionable insights that can come from technology companies is a real value. So to summarize the 4 in here, the first thing procurement needs to incorporate is this value assessment, these 4 different things. As for Chain IQ, our ability to win and retain is because we have a flexible ecosystem of partners that deliver value based on what a client needs. And then we really try to minimize the integration costs, or not even have integration costs, so that we ensure that the time to value and the delivery are really for those point solutions it's needed for that time and it's fit for purpose. And yet we have the ecosystem that allows us to be able to scale with clients based on their changes and their needs. So we incorporate the ecosystem and the flexibility along with our understanding of how to really deliver value in those 4 different areas.
Interesting, very interesting. And you touched on strategic thinking there, something you and I have discussed in the past, alongside critical thinking as being particularly important skills in this future of procurement. And you know I can't talk to you about technology without talking to you about associated skills, a subject so close to my heart. So, you actually took part in our research into the future of digital procurement skills as well, and you're a very valued contributor. So now you're going in this direction with tech. How are you going to develop your people to gain the maximum value from these tech solutions? You touched on strategic thinking, what that might be possible. What's your vision for that for your people to enhance the capability? Because, of course, that is going to have real value for your customers as well, of course.
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think it's a dynamic question because it seems like once you figure out what the skill is for 1 year or for 2 years, then the skill needs to change because technology is changing and cultures can change to some extent as well. So, but it's funny you asked that too, because I was just typing into Copilot just a few days ago. And I asked the question, what skills and competencies will be most important for an employee to have when working in the procurement organization over the next 5 years? And then I said, provide the skill only and not the reason why. Well, Copilot returned 8 different skills. The top 2 were digital and data literacy, and the second was sustainability and ethical sourcing. Number 4 was strategic sourcing skills. So the results aren't surprising. Now, one might say, is sustainability and ethical sourcing still number 2? Is that the key priority? But I thought what was interesting was that strategic sourcing as a skill was lower on the list, or midpoint amongst the 8. So then I asked, I asked this in Copilot, and I said, well, how do you help improve data literacy? And of course, it was mentioning training, and there was one other recommendation, talks about making sure that you have a mentor, which I thought, hey, that's a good thing to do. It could be outside of your function. There has to be an intentional effort to make data literacy a part of a company's culture. And your interviewing processes should include questions about that. KPIs should include it. Personal annual objectives should also include things on focus on data literacy. So your question being around how do we focus on the future? As long as I can have the flexibility and liberty to say that that might change, right now a focus for us is on data literacy. Just not because Copilot said it, but we do see that we need lovers of data. And I'll give a shout out to Dr. Eloise Epstein, who I have a great deal of respect and admiration for, and enjoy always talking with her. There was a time that she had said, and I'm just trying to remember as well, that we were talking about data and the focus on data management and data governance. And one of the things that Eloise had said was recommending that during the interviewing process, new procurement professionals for a job that you may have is to not just ask them about their sourcing experience, but ask them to share an example that illustrates how they are passionate about data. And I've tried that in interviews, and it throws people off. But it's a great one to be able to ask someone, how are you passionate about data? Give me an example of what you did, what the outcome was, and trying to identify those individuals, I think, is a great thing to be able to help build out the data literacy needs and help companies evolve to become more data literate as well as they move along that journey. That would be my recommendation, is a focus on data literacy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, again, the research I referenced earlier that you took part in last year, data literacy came out very, very high on the list of key skills. And for those of you watching who are interviewing people to sort of ask the sort of questions Travis mentioned, guess where's a really good place to get some really good questions about that? Gen AI. Ask what are you testing for, how are you going to test it, why are you testing it, what questions. It's a really, really useful tool. If you've not done that to structure interviews, then you're missing out. You can really do that. But yeah, it was very, very clear. To your early point about, you were giving me an answer right now, Travis, that also really resonates, because I reread our research that we published at the end of September a couple of weeks ago. And with the evolution of AI since, which I'm still trying to get a handle on myself, I felt this is dating quite quickly. So it's still a really useful document, But the world has moved on already. And what was that, 4 or 5 months ago? So, and then to another point, I was at a meeting of recruitment leaders last week where we discussed the impact of AI on recruitment. And there's an awful lot of very nervous recruitment business owners at the moment, worried that they're going to be replaced by AI-driven tools. And we discussed about the skills, well, the opportunities for automation and AI, and we discussed about the skills. And there's real parallels. In fact, I published an article on LinkedIn about this earlier on this week, about actually the opportunities for automation and AI in procurement and recruitment are quite similar. And they'll put the emphasis on the same sorts of skills that can't be automated. And again, we've discussed this in the past about those human-centric skills around relationship building and interaction with other human beings. So there's a lot of parallels there. But I think, the message I've always felt for procurement leaders is look at your operating model to incorporate different skills like data literacy, to bring in specialists, your procurement excellence function or your digital garage, call it what you will. That to me is an opportunity to bring in specific skills. You can't necessarily turn every category manager into a data scientist. And similarly, for professionals watching it, if you look at your own personal career progression, you've got to think about the skills you're going to require. To your point earlier about, can we be more strategic in our thinking? If you're aware you need to improve that and you look at opportunities to do that and you find tools that will help you do that, that is an opportunity to progress your own career yourself. Don't wait for your employer to train you on that. Get out there and make it happen yourself. I appreciate that's difficult when you're working long hours, you've got family and all that sort of thing. But, if you want to really stay ahead of this particular curve, or at least keep up with it, then you've got to take some personal responsibility for your own personal development. Yeah. Right, Travis, that's been absolutely wonderful, really insightful. I've got one more question for you. People have been watching this who found this interesting, who want to know more about insourcing, want to know more about value, want to know more about your technology. How can they contact you?
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, our company website, chainiq.com, but feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or, happy to reach out to me via my email as well, travis.johnson@chainiq.com. Would love to be able to collaborate. And I say that sincerely in regards to just brainstorming things too. I was just talking with a CPO yesterday, and I had said, for me, I find real value, aside from ChainIQ wanting to be able to support clients. If I can help to advance procurement leaders and supply chain professionals by brainstorming, networking, connecting people, sharing best practices, that's what I really do love doing. And so happy to connect with people on various fronts.
Yeah, thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. Something which I really consider to be a privilege in my job, a chance I get to speak to all these amazing people and learn from them. And of course, I'm hoping that I might see you at DPW in New York in June, when we'll be doing more of the same, I'm sure, with so many great minds there. Everyone knows how to get me. You'll find me. I live on LinkedIn, as you all know. So thank you for watching. If you want to take part in this sort of conversation, you've got some knowledge to share with the audience, then I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you need help in your own career or your own talent attraction strategy, I'd also love to hear from you. Travis, thanks again. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it as well.